Welcome to The Power of Now What, a podcast on overcoming the various problems and challenges that occur when one is on a spiritual journey, when one is on a spiritual path or path of self discovery, engaged in a spiritual practice such as meditation or other disciplines, and even post awakening and post the enlightenment experience itself. This is episode 5, titled Is Pain a Problem? Alternatively titled Life is a Pain in the Ass. And with this one today, I'd like to answer a question that was posed on my Spotify Q&A. If you don't follow my Spotify, go and follow on Spotify. And if you don't follow me on YouTube, go and hit subscribe on YouTube as well. Today we are looking at the problem of pain. And this follower asked about physical pain and mental pain, emotional pain. These are two very big subjects, and I'm just going to devote this entire episode purely to physical pain. But I'm also going to speak on a very deep level about our experience of the body itself. And I'm going to have to begin before even getting to the subject of physical pain and physical sickness. Let's first begin by exploring our experience of the body itself. I'm going to speak about our general view of the body and the common approach towards the body. What happens when we begin to get into a spiritual discipline, and what are some of the unique problems and challenges that happen when we change the fundamental way that we even perceive and experience our body itself, and overcoming some of those various challenges with my sort of experiences with all of this along the way. So the first thing I'd like to do right here, it's quite an interesting exercise that we can do, a meditative exercise in itself, because what we need to begin doing is actually getting deep into the hard wiring. And the body, the experience of the body, is such a fundamental thing, and it seems so obvious that we very rarely question it. And the experience of the body is something that is laid down so early on in our life. The hard wiring is baked into us from a very, very early point. And so we never really go back and question any of this. We have early experiences of the body, and that kind of sets us up for our assumed habitual experience of physical sensation. But as usual, we're going to run the clock all the way back, and let's see if we can reevaluate, reanalyze, and reinterpret some very basic fundamentals. And the first thing that we're going to do with this exercise is I want to ask you what your relationship to your own body is. And already this is a strange question, because we have such an ingrained, automatic, habitual understanding of our own body that it seems kind of obvious. If I was to ask you what color the sky is, you'd look at me like I was crazy. If I ask you what's your relationship to your own body, you might look at me like I'm crazy. But let's just analyze this. What is the language that you use in order to describe your experience of the body? Do you say, I have a body, which implies a sort of ownership? Do you say I am in my body? Do you say you are your body? What's the general language that you use when you refer to your physical body? I have a body. I am my body. We say it in our language all the time. Of oh my, my body just isn't working at the moment. We say my body as if you are something separate outside of the body, and you have this thing. It's an object just like any other object, a possession. You speak of your body like you speak of your car. Like my body's broken at the moment. Yeah. So what is your relationship to your body? And language is a good it's a good way to assess and analyze your own perceptions. Language is, there's a lot of clues in language about the way we understand things. So, getting into that, what is the language that you use surrounding your body? It's a very good exercise to start doing. And then I'm also going to ask you here, what is the way that you perceive your bodily operation? So, do you see yourself as being inside a physical body and you sort of pilot this body? Are you the driver of this body? Do you decide what it does and then it goes and does it? Are you like an active pilot? Or do you see yourself in more of like a managerial sort of role? Do you sort of manage your body? Is your body a kind of a series of separate processes and you sort of collate and organize all of this together? It's worth looking at because it's all quite interesting. And all of it's completely insane. Obviously, it's like, what do you mean? You're in your body. Where are you exactly? Try and point to you, because when you point to what you see as you tend to point to your body. But where is the you within this? Do you point to your brain? Are you your brain? Have you ever experienced being a brain? What is your experience of life? Do you experience being a body, or is your body kind of separate? Has your body sort of fallen into the background and you perceive your life as something that happens only in your brain, and your body is sort of a silly byproduct? I mean, that's the general consensus. The general view is a very sort of matter based, physical, biological view. There's nothing wrong with this. It obviously represents something very fundamental and important. However, there are some issues with the biological viewpoint, because we have come to kind of perceive the body itself as a sort of archaic, almost obsolete, silly thing that keeps breaking. And it's the result of sort of billions of years of evolution. And we've come from a sort of upright ape like creature. And obviously, the body has all of the limitations, setbacks, and fragilities, vulnerabilities that this implies. That's our general kind of background view. We'll get to that a little bit later. But have you ever tested any of that experientially? When you actually think of the experience of your life itself, is that what you've experienced? Have you experienced being a biological brain, or is it something else? Because the more we get into this, the deeper we get into questioning a little bit about how our consciousness relates to the body. In the beginning, it seems, well, it's totally obvious. But as we get a little bit further into it, you start to go, well, hang on, maybe actually, maybe it's not so obvious. Maybe it's not so obvious after all. And obviously, this throws up a lot of questions that I'll be answering in a moment. But firstly, just to begin with, this exercise one right here: are you in your body? Do you have a body? Do you say you are your body? And how much of you is your mind, and how much of you is your physical body? How much is the physical body, and how much is the brain? What can we put a percentage on it? How much of there is there? So, let's look at the origins of why we believe that you are a separate little self that sits inside a tiny part of the brain and looks out and collates all of the senses, perceptions, thoughts, feelings together and relates it back to the body. But if you go all the way back to childhood, and I wonder how many people have had this experience, have had the experience of questioning your own consciousness when you're a child. Because when you're a kid, the body and life is still fun and new and exciting. You keep discovering new things because it's all kind of magical as you're growing. Your first experience of running very fast, your first experience of jumping, of falling certain heights, of climbing trees. And this is all very, very exciting to the body and to the mind. And so as we experience these things, there's just so much excitement, and we start to test the limits. And we start to wonder, well, what can I wonder if I could fly? Like, I wonder if I can. We begin to test the limits of what the physical manifestation of the body can do. And at some point, we have these experiences in consciousness in which because as we begin to realize there seems to be a difference between my mind and my body, there seems to be a difference between my thoughts, my perceptions, my feelings, and especially my imagination and my body. We can say, well, I can imagine myself running across the playground, and then I seemingly can will my body to run across the playground. But interestingly, I can imagine myself flying across the playground, but I can't will my body to fly across the playground. And we come up against the limits of what the body can do, and therefore, through our habitual learning process, we come to realize that there are very solid limits to our bodily processes. But with our imagination, when we're a child, I wonder how many people do this. If you're a particularly imaginative child, cast your being back, cast your memory back to when you tried to use your imagination to leave your body. You do it when you're laying awake at night. When we daydream, we do this to some extent. But did you ever actually try and do it? Did you ever try and use your imagination to do supernatural things? And you begin to realize that you do have all the memories of attempting this. It's just you kind of forgot them along the way. But there were times, there's crazy things you tried to do as a kid. You tried to read other people's minds. Sometimes you pretended that you could. You tried to swap your consciousness with other children. I mean, I remember doing this as a kid. We tried, if we ran into each other hard enough, would we swap bodies? Where does this concept, can we swap bodies? Can I be someone else for a day? This kind of ties back to identity perception, but these experiments in consciousness, we do them a lot when we are children. And as we come up against the limits, we realize, obviously, right, I can't read other children's minds. I can't switch my consciousness. I can't leave my body. I can't turn invisible. And we do. Can I just evaporate entirely? And we try these experiments in consciousness and obviously learn that there are limits of what is possible and what is not possible. But isn't it interesting that we have the capacity to imagine this? And where does all this imagination happen? Within our consciousness. Whether it happens in the physical world or not, we still have the experience of it happening within our conscious imagination. But then, obviously, over enough time, the limits of the human body get so ingrained that we begin to forget all of the stuff that doesn't work and only focus on the stuff that does work. Naturally, when we're a child, we come up against the problem of pain, and it's horrific. It's horrific. It's the first time you experience real pain. Let's say you break your arm, you break your ankle, or you get very sick, or you have severe headaches or ear infections and illnesses. I mean, children suffer quite a lot physically. A lot happens when you're a child. And naturally, because pain is so unpleasant, we become terrified of being in pain. And that is a very, very primal, hardwired instinct to avoid physical pain. We become terrified of physical pain. We'll get to physical pain a little bit later on, but it's important to recognize one of the reasons that you are so terrified of pain and why pain is quote unquote painful is because we experienced it when we were a child, and when you're a child, you don't have the same resources that you have when you're an adult. Very, very, very fundamental and important to understand if you're getting into your physical and mental health. Crucially important to understand that your early experiences happened to you when you were a child, without the coping strategies, without the mechanisms, without the resources, without the control and power that you have as an adult. If you began now, if you started again and started from this point, forget everything that's happened, started from now, a lot of the things that you're afraid of would disappear, because if you experience them for the first time today, you realize you have a lot more resources, intelligence, capacity, resilience, power, control, and freedom to deal with these issues. That was maybe slightly. We're gonna get to physical pain later. It's a very difficult one to sort of tackle. So, a very common thing that begins to happen as we especially in this era, in this modern era, is that because we have very sedentary jobs, and our lives become very sedentary. We don't get a huge amount of exercise, and we don't live outdoors like we used to. We end up stuck very much in a mind-based culture. We are very much in a mind-based society. A lot of the time we have jobs that demand our cognitive capacity and doesn't demand our physical capacity. And we begin to neglect the body and even forget that we even have one. We only start to notice it when it goes wrong, when something isn't working right, and we neglect that we even have one, and for a large part try and ignore it. In my experience, so a huge part of my shift, a huge part of my awakening, a huge part of my transformation was when I really started to get into exercise. My transformation began entirely physically. I decided I need to lose weight. I need to look after my physical body or I'm going to die. And I had this mortal terror of sickness and death. And so I started training physically very hard, very often. And the change in my mental health was incredible. And the shift in consciousness of how I perceived life, the world, and myself initially began through all of this physical training, physical exercise, because suddenly I became aware of how incredible the body is, just how amazing it is, and perhaps more importantly, how the body relates to our mental health. I was vaguely aware that physical training was good for your mental health. Although before I'd done any training, I thought, how is that possible? Your body and brain are completely separate, aren't they? How could that work? But then over time, as I got into running and weightlifting, I realized, okay, well, when I'm running and weightlifting, it feels good. I mean, you have to push through the initial 10 minutes of hard work to actually get started. But once you've started, it feels fantastic. You feel light, you feel energized, you feel free. And as I began to burn away all of the adrenaline, all of the cortisol, I know I'm drawing on the biological model here, but burning out the adrenaline, cortisol, and really just exercising the body, I began to notice this massive shift in my mind because I began to wake up early. I began to wake up at the crack of dawn. In my previous life, I'd been waking up at midday. It was awful. And now I suddenly woke up at the crack of dawn, leapt out of bed, got tons of energy because my body is primed to go running. It's off to train. All of a sudden, my body's woken up and wants to know where the hunt is. Where's the war? Where's the fight? My body finally woke up, and naturally, your mind follows suit. I became very aware of what happens to my mind when I've been doing lots of training. I just feel lighter and I feel a lot happier. And all of a sudden, it was quite a shift in itself to go, that's really interesting. I mean, previously, I just kind of just took my body for granted. My body had kind of fallen into the background, and yet, isn't that ridiculous? Your body is the one thing that you are aware of all of the time. And yet, for some reason, we neglect this. Isn't the quality of your life going to go down if you neglect the quality of your body? Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So that's my initial experiences with exercise. And then later on, my spiritual experiences shifted the way that I perceive the body also. Just as a side note, there is the issue with a purely biological belief system as it pertains to mental and physical health is what you end up starting to try and do is hack your body. If you only ever perceive your mind and mental health on a purely biological basis, you only will focus on things like dopamine and serotonin and brain chemistry and the physical structure of the brain. And naturally, it's not long until you're treating you start trying to, you almost treat your body like you're the doctor and your body's the patient, and like it's just a purely biological organism, and you start looking after it like you'd look after an animal almost. And so you start trying to take the right pills and do the right things in order to stimulate the right brain chemistry. And there's a huge amount of value in this. I do see it as a fantastic starting point for anyone who is just beginning their process of awakening, their process of questioning things, or their process of trying to develop spiritually, personally, physically, emotionally, all of those. The best place to start is wherever you are. So, whatever your model for understanding the world is the best place to start. Don't try to create an entirely new belief system. Don't try to create a new belief system. Beliefs are the problem. Let's drop all of it. Begin with all of the knowledge, experience, understanding, values, everything that you have, because trying to shift your perspective too soon will only confuse you. And this is where I started. I had a very atheistic, very scientifically, biologically informed worldview, and so that's where I started, and so that's what I did. And hey, well, it worked, so that was a great place to start. But it is worth recognizing that there are limitations to that worldview, and eventually, as with absolutely everything, whenever we try to set about to achieve something, sooner or later you're going to come up against the limits of what you're trying to achieve, until you finally achieve enlightenment and you can wash your hands of the entire thing, and you can completely escape samsara completely and get right, just leave the whole thing. No more attempts, no more processes, no more trying, no more striving, no more changing, nothing. Just you're out of the whole deal. So that's some of the issues with the biological belief system. You simply end up trying to biologically hack your body and brain, and you find that it doesn't work. Interestingly enough, this is the same when it comes to pain. Let's get into the subject of pain. Physical, I'm talking purely physical. I will do an entire episode on emotional and mental pain later. I just want to focus entirely on physical pain. Let's do another exercise right here about the way we perceive, experience, and feel the body. So, close your eyes unless you're driving. If you're driving, I wouldn't recommend doing this exercise at all. But if you're in a position where it's safe and you can close your eyes, close your eyes and breathe. Breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth if you can. And we are going to transfer our conscious awareness away from the outside world and towards the sensations of the body. Now, keeping your eyes closed, if I could wave a magic wand right now and remove any mental image, any visual image that you have about your body, I wave that magic wand now. No visual image, no mental image of how your body is. And with your eyes still closed, without a mental image, what is your experience of the body? And really do this. Don't try to create a concept. Don't try to imagine anything. Don't generate anything new. And we're not looking at opinions. We're not looking at interpretations. We're not trying to analyze. We're not trying to name or label or put any symbols on anything at all. Let's say the magic wand also gets rid of your capacity for language too. And instead, going directly into your experience, what is the experience of the sensations in the body? Now, that is your entire experience of life right there. That is life, the experience of the sensations in the body. That sensation itself, does it inherently have the visual image, the names, the interpretations that you have commonly come to understand is your body? When we talk about your body, you probably have a visual image in your mind. You have a collection of very strong emotions relating to your body internally and externally. And you probably have a huge set of associations and what you have currently come to understand about your body. But actually, if we got rid of all of that, if we got rid of all of the cognitive chatter about the body and instead go directly to the experience itself, the experience of the body as it is in the moment, no future, no past. What's the experience of the body now? There is your entire life right there. And is it a problem? It just is. That is the sensation of life itself. If you get rid of all of the images of organs and bones and flesh and blood, and you get rid of all of our general conceptions about what's going on, the processes of the body and where did I come from and all of that, forget all of that and take some refuge within the sensation itself within the present moment. You come to realize that actually your experience of your body is a cloud of sensation. That is your experience. Everything else relating to your body is a concept, a theory, an idea, an image, an opinion, a belief. All of those are products of the mind. None of those things exist in reality. Reality is what you can experience, and your experience of the body is a cloud of sensation, nothing more. Your experience of the body at any given moment is a collection of sensations. Everything that we add to that is an interpretation, an opinion, a belief, an analysis, a mental image. That is all. That's it. That's it. That's all you will ever have to experience in life. That is it. It's done. It's over. Now, Again, I'll get to physical pain in a minute. Let's stay with this for a moment. General background belief. Generally speaking, we come to understand that this cloud of sensations that you experience on a moment-to-moment basis, I mean, we can keep doing this. I'm saying a lot of quite challenging things here, so I'm sure your mind's going all off to saying yes, but, and what about this, what about that, what about the other? But just don't get involved in the mind chatter for now. This is important. Instead, keep going directly to the sensation in the body. No matter how annoyed you're getting with me, no matter how angry you are with me, or even, oh, this feels fantastic and lovely and wonderful, don't get involved in any of that chatter whatsoever. Instead, continually return to the sensations in the body. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Adding no visual image, add no opinion, add no labels. Add nothing at all. No concept, no theory, no belief. Just experience the sensation of the body directly as it is, raw, intense, immediate sensation. Now, generally, we have come to believe, because I can experience this cloud of sensation, I must somehow be tied to this cloud of sensation. I must be limited to this cloud of sensation, and therefore this cloud of sensation must be me. However, can you find the edge of that cloud of sensation? Can you experience the limit of that cloud of sensation? Can it be found? I don't mean physically with your hands. If you close your eyes, again, not if you're driving or cooking or operating heavy machinery. I don't know who's listening to this whilst operating a JCB, but it could be happening. I don't know. But can you find the limit, the edge of your cloud of sensation, or is it just a cloud of sensation? At some point, because it's seemingly so convincing that this is me, we stop questioning it after a while. When you're a child, you question it, but when you've grown into adulthood, you cease questioning it. After all, it feels so obvious. I mean, all of our senses, all of our perceptions, let's go here into our five sense reality. Because you feel like you are localized behind your eyes, you believe that must be where you reside. You must believe that you are the focal point that receives all of our sights, sounds, smells, tastes, everything that we can touch, and the sensations within the body. But hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. The body never said, I am you. You have assumed that's the case. You have come to believe that's the case. But the body itself, the sensations themselves, have never said that. The external world told you that, but you have never experienced that yourself. You have experienced a body, you have experienced the sensations and the senses that this body has received, but the body itself, the sensations and the perceptions, never said, I am you. You have assumed that part. So, I want to suggest a visual image and a model for this. If you ever look at bumper cars, or sometimes called dodgems, I think we call them dodgems in England. I don't know if in America you call them dodgems or bumper cars or whatever you call them. But if you didn't know where those bumper cars were being powered by, you would assume that each of them is powered by its own individual, separate power source. It's only when you look up and see that they're all connected to the ceiling that you realize they're all connected to the same source. Now, this is how consciousness works. You are the infinite universal consciousness, and everybody is. That has become aware of a single, individual, finite, temporary, separate cloud of sensation, perception. And that's it. That's the reality of consciousness. Don't believe me. Please don't believe what I'm saying. Instead, go directly to your experience. You can experience the body. You can experience your senses. But you are not the body, and you are not your senses. You are the experience of this. You can always take a step backwards into the consciousness itself, be aware that a cloud of sensation and perceptions are occurring, but disengage from identifying with those things and instead identify with the pure consciousness itself, and you're there. You are there. Enlightened. That's it. That's where the enlightenment is. The pure, open, empty, spacious consciousness that is not attached even to the physical body. Let's talk about physical pain. Physical pain, and I've titled this one, Is Pain a Problem? Now, my definition of pain is anything that causes suffering. Does pain cause suffering? You bet your ass it does. Pain causes an enormous amount of suffering, and it is one of the primary causes of all of the misery in the world. So, what are we going to do about this problem of pain? And how does the spiritual path, how does the promise of awakening endeavor to overcome, alleviate, and solve some of the problem of physical pain? Well. The general way of doing things is to take painkillers, and there's no harm in this. Absolutely, the first thing that you should ever do if you ever find yourself in physical pain is remove the source of the pain. That's the sensible, logical, and yes, spiritual thing to do. If your body is in physical pain, if it's in physical danger or it's injured, you need to seek medical professionals in order to help you with this. That's the first thing that should be done with physical pain. Interestingly enough, though, the problem with painkillers, the problem with anesthetics, is that over time they just stop working, and you have to start taking more and more of them in order to alleviate the pain. It's long been recognized that pain relief is a surprisingly tricky subject. You would think, well, there's just this one painkiller and that should take care of pain. But pain doesn't really seem to work like that. It's a sticky problem. There's no sort of one solution to pain. If your pain is short term, you're feeling a short term pain, the best thing to do is understand that it will pass in time. And although we generally kind of clench our teeth, grit our teeth, and just try and get through it by taking painkillers and doing all the things that we need to do physically to alleviate the pain, well, eventually then it will pass. If it's chronic, you're in a real tricky position. And a lot of the time when people are suffering from chronically painful conditions, this is when they begin to start looking into the spiritual path and looking into spiritual matters. After all, the very nature of pain is that you can't get away from it. There's no escaping it. And if even the painkillers aren't working, and all of the things that you're trying to do to alleviate your pain aren't working, you are forced to start looking for any means of alleviating the suffering relating to the pain. And sometimes I wonder, I don't know this for certain, but I wonder if partly the purpose on a deeper scale, on the grand scheme of things, if the purpose of longer term painful health conditions is to stimulate a deeper hunger for a search for relief from suffering, I wonder if that's what the trigger is. I mean, I can speak from personal experience here. I suffer from chronic back pain, and have done for some time now. And some of it's triggered some of the deepest insights. It seems to be it's only when I'm suffering intensely that I seem to have the deepest insights, and that it's only when I'm in a great deal of pain physically and mentally that I really start delving deeper into spiritual matters. I mean, that's one answer to why we have to suffer pain in the first place. Perhaps it's a stimulation. Perhaps it's a triggering of a deeper search for meaning, understanding, relief, and liberation. So, chronic pain, you're kind of stuck with this chronic condition, and people then begin to look for deeper matters because the biological model, the matter model, has failed them at that time. The biological and matter model actually works in a huge amount of cases, and it is a very good place to start. You know, if you've got a headache, take paracetamol. There's no harm in that. That's logical and smart. If see a doctor, if you break your leg, you'll need to get it put in a cast. If you're sick, get some tests done, and sometimes they can just fix it and solve it, and boom, presto bingo, that's the problem solved. There you go, done. But when it's persistent, when it's chronic, or where the science and the biology fails, people end up turning towards spiritual matters or meditation. Meditation for pain relief is a growing field and is now being confirmed by studies to be as effective at pain relief as painkillers for mild to moderate chronic pain. And obviously, I'm a big proponent of this. Being a meditation coach, it's in my it's in my best interests to say that this is the solution. It's not the entire solution, but it can change things for you if you're suffering from chronic pain, or if you're just suffering from any pain in general. Let's begin by understanding there is a difference between pain and suffering. And if you've never come across this before, it takes a little while to get your head around. But pain itself, this does kind of go for mental as well as physical, but the pain itself is just a sensation. The actual sensation of pain itself, it's always worth doing this when you're feeling pain, to just breathe, bring yourself fully into the present moment. Just bring yourself fully into the present and experience the pain directly. Don't try and push it away. Don't try and get rid of it. Simply experience the pain itself. And especially if it's only mild or moderate pain, you can use the pain itself as an exploration of the way your body communicates to your mind and the way your body communicates to consciousness. It's an intelligent signal, pain. It's just a signal. It's a sensation that obviously we would rather it's not there, but in and of itself, it's just a sensation. What creates suffering is everything that we then attach to this pain. So everything that comes around it, we feel tired, ratty, irritable. We feel like there are big implications to this pain. What if I can't go to work? What if I suffer? What if this gets worse? What if this pain is an indication that something's seriously wrong? What if this pain is going to trigger a mental health episode in me? All of this suffering, worry, and stress that happens around the pain is different. All of those things that we attach and add to the pain aren't actually the pain itself. The pain itself is just a sensation. And deep in meditation, if you can experience the raw sensation without attaching anything to it, the suffering vanishes. The pain remains. There's not really much we can do about that. Maybe there's nothing we can do about that. In which case, hey, that's great. There's nothing we can do about it. That takes a huge amount of responsibility out of the equation. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. Experience the raw sensation in and of itself with nothing attached to it, and presto bingo, we have gotten rid of the suffering associated with the pain. Simple as that. Now, if you didn't know that, you assume that everything you attach to the pain is inherent in the pain itself, is something that inevitably comes with the pain. It doesn't. It doesn't have to. It's not an inevitable thing that happens as a result of the pain. It's likely to happen, especially if you're in chronic pain. And again, I'm speaking from experience. I'm not speaking as somebody who is in perfect health and is just some young 18-year-old who's never suffered any pain ever. And I'm telling you to just get up and get on with it. That's not what I'm saying. I've suffered terribly. And I'm not putting myself above anyone or trying to say, in a way, I'm saying this is the ideal. This is what we're trying to strive towards, is to get to a point where we're no longer attaching emotional suffering to our physical pain. And I manage it. I manage to do that sometimes better than others. There are weeks that go by where I'm just aware of a painful sensation in my back, but I'm not attaching any emotional weight to this at all. I mean, there's a very famous study that happened here, just as we're on the subject of physical pain and secondary suffering, of a builder who was having a huge amount of trouble at home with his wife was gonna leave him, and they were struggling to kind of make ends meet to look after their kids. And one day he's at work, and he's a builder, and he climbs up this ladder and he falls off the ladder. He lands on his feet, but he lands on an upturned nail, a huge 6-inch nail that was sticking out of the ground. He lands on this, and it goes right through his boot, and you can see the top of the nail sticking up through the boot. And he is in agony. He falls over and he clutches his foot, and he's howling and yelping in pain. They call an ambulance. The ambulance turns up and they pump him full of morphine, but it doesn't touch it. It doesn't touch the pain whatsoever. Even with all that morphine, he is in absolute agony. They rush him to hospital. They get him to hospital, and they finally manage to cut the boot away. They have to cut the boot off of the foot. And as they cut it off, they go, hang on a minute, there's no blood. That's a bit strange, because there's a nail that's obviously pierced his foot. Where's the blood? They cut his boot off, and they find that the nail actually missed the foot entirely. The nail went through the gap between the toes and didn't pierce his foot at all. There was no physical damage. His brain, that's a true story. That is a documented story that happened. He swore that he could feel the physical pain. What happened is he looked down and saw the nail sticking out, assumed that the nail had pierced his foot, and his body and mind created the pain because of his association. He thought he was going to be out of work, and therefore he was going to lose his family. And so the body created the painful sensation in response to this. That's just a fascinating case study when it comes to physical pain. It should give you a lot of clues as to the nature of what's going on with suffering as it relates to pain. In my case, I'm a person. I'm in the fitness industry. That's my general bread and butter, and I'm suffering with this back injury. The emotional suffering of that. I mean, I'm probably going to have to find something else to do. I can't keep working in the fitness industry with chronic back pain. And I've just spent the last 10 years of my life. This is God's favorite joke is a man with a plan. That is God's favorite punchline right there. Somebody with a plan, that's a real knee slapper to the heavenly host. I just spent the last 10 years retraining, training my body and training my mind to be able to be a fitness instructor and a personal trainer. I finally qualify and get started as a personal trainer and injure my back and have to stop. Now, naturally, the emotional suffering associated with this is potentially severe. Luckily, I've done enough meditation and spiritual practice to see the deeper meaning in all of this. But essentially, the outline of how does the spiritual disciplines, what is the solution on a spiritual basis for pain, chronic pain and sickness? Well, changing the way that you experience the body goes a long way to alleviating this suffering. We can't always alleviate the pain. That's different. If there is a solution to the pain physically, take it. Sometimes there isn't, and we find ourselves in a bit of a pickle, find ourselves in a bit of a bind. But if you can change the way that your consciousness perceives the pain, we can alleviate the secondary suffering. And this cycle begins to break. So we have physical pain and suffer emotional pain as a result. Because of the emotional pain, as with the builder with the nail through his foot, that makes the pain worse. The emotional suffering creates more physical pain. If there's more physical pain, it creates more emotional suffering. If we can remove the story, we have interrupted the pain cycle. If you can interrupt the pain cycle, the physical pain will diminish. If the physical pain diminishes, the emotional pain will also diminish, and so on and so on. We go from a vicious circle to a virtuous circle. Now, in theory, that works. In practice, well, give it a go. It helps to a great extent, I have to say. Obviously, it's a shame, but it's life. The struggles that I'm in with the chronic pain. Yeah, it's a pain. In fact, as the back pain transferred to my glutes, I can quite literally say that it's now a pain in the ass. But that's all it is, and it does stimulate a deeper looking and a deeper gratitude. I've got slight back pain, but there's a lot of people who are in hospital, a lot of people who can't walk. I've still got all my limbs. I'm still upright and breathing. I'll count my blessings on that one. So, spiritual approach towards pain, because the original question on the Q&A on my Spotify was how do you continue your spiritual practice when you're in physical or mental pain? And we're talking about physical pain here. Well, a lot of the spiritual practices actually have an interesting relationship to pain. I mentioned in a previous podcast about the ascetics or ascetics. And these are people who seek out extreme physical suffering as a spiritual practice in itself, as a discipline in itself, with the general idea that this brings you closer to source. It brings you closer to God. It brings you closer to the infinite universal consciousness. And they starve themselves to the point of almost dying. You see it in the sadhus in India. You see it quite often. And sometimes actually take on practices that cause intense pain. I mean, in the Western tradition, there's like flagellation. You'd find like in certain traditions of like actually physically causing pain, because then you are, and there's various different kind of justifications for this and understandings for this. Sometimes it's seen as a kind of purification. Sometimes it's seen that pain is a punishment in itself for your past sins. I don't really believe that. I don't think that holds a great deal of weight at all. I just don't think, in a way, I just don't think it's that easy. I think if it was that simple, yeah, we'd all just whip ourselves free of our karma and then just be done with it. It would actually be simple. if pain freed us from our karma, we'd all be liberated. Because there's enough of it, Lord knows. So I don't know if pain would actually do that. I can say that pain does force a kind of presence. Pain does bring you into the present moment by quite an intense degree, um, because there's not really much else you can focus on other than pain when you're in pain. So I can understand that. And actually, when I started my running and weight training, that's a form of asceticism in itself. It's a huge relief. I wonder if there's a big resurgence in people taking up exercise. I wonder if it's a form of distraction from the other stuff going on in your mind, because when you're knee deep in a 5K run and your heart's beating, you're sweating, you're breathing heavy. I mean, I think it feels fantastic because all you can focus on is the physical sensation. So in some spiritual traditions, that's partly the idea, is that the pain can focus the mind into a single physical sensation. There's some weight to that. So the idea of purification, the idea of focusing the mind, and maybe there's a sense of, if you're in extreme deprivation, if you're not eating and you just sit in a cave on your own for long periods of time, will this get rid of your ego? Well, yeah, it will. It will strip away ego and the sense of being an individual, temporary, finite self. There's some idea that it kind of brings you closer to death. You're half in, half out. Pain takes you to the death realm, the other realm, the spirit realm. And that's so just talking about post awakening problems right here. Some of the problems that arise when you're on the spiritual path as it relates to physical pain. And one of them, I would say, is that it's an attempt at a stoicism, an attempt at either using your pain as a physical a physical manifestation of your spiritual practice, to come to see your pain as, this is a grim sort of crusade that I must go on. I must endure this pain for spiritual reasons, similar to how the ascetics do it. And just through sheer stoicism, this is just something that I must endure. A big, a big problem with stoicism, with the false perception of stoicism, is that actually it works. You would be absolutely stunned at the amount of physical pain that you can endure. You can endure almost intolerable pain for a very long period of time. But as with a lot of things, just because you should do something, that doesn't mean. No, wait, I got that wrong. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something. And I wonder if there's a lot of people suffering physical pain unnecessarily. And in an attempt to be more spiritual, are attempting to endure more physical pain than is actually necessary. One of the problems that happens is that you might even start seeking out pain. The solution, I would say, to this is, you're never, nobody ever in the history of humanity has ever under suffered. Everybody suffers. Everybody. You are not going to get all the way through life, get to the end and go, I wish I'd had more pain. I wish I'd experienced more pain in my life. Nobody ever, ever, not once, has gotten to the end of their life and wished for more pain. Therefore, so why do it whilst you're alive? Why say, I need more pain? That's not the right approach. Accepting pain is different. I'd concede that. If the pain that you're experiencing is inevitable, you are left with the challenge of acceptance. But don't accept pain until you've exhausted all possible avenues of resolving the pain. That would be my solution. Once you've exhausted all possible avenues, then you can begin the challenge of acceptance. But don't do it before. I think a lot of people go to acceptance too soon out of nothing but laziness, resignation. I give up. I give up looking for a solution. I'm done. I fall into despair. No, that is not right. There is a way forwards, always. If you can change something, do it. Don't endure and accept pain unnecessarily. There must be a way forwards. There must be. The second post awakening problem, this is a trap people fall into. Once you get deeply into meditation and you find that you can actually disengage and disassociate your consciousness from your physical body, I mean, it's incredible. I've done this myself. I've completely left the body entirely. And in a way, it's very hard to come back sometimes. It's very, very difficult to come back. It's like once you've woken up from a nightmare, you don't want to go back to sleep again. Once you've woken up from a nightmare, you want to stay woken up for quite a while until you can be absolutely certain that when you go back to sleep, you're not going to experience the same nightmare again. And that's kind of what it's like. When you've developed a deep enough meditative practice that you can disengage from the physical sensations of the body, eventually, once you've had some deep awakening and enlightenment experiences, eventually you start saying, well, why go back at all? Why bother coming back? Shouldn't I wonder if it's possible to simply stay within this fully disengaged state, which is essentially sadhana, which is what a lot of people are actually striving for in spiritual practice, the state of bliss, which actually is the state of peace, the state of shunyata, the void, um, a state of no mind, no more interpretation. You are aware that there is a body, but you no longer believe that it is your body. It is just there. There are just sensations there. And a lot of people try and fall into the trap, actually, of just trying to leave the body and then disregard the body entirely. But this is a little bit of a trap in itself, partly because it can't be done. You have to come back sooner or later. There's a reason that you have the physical manifestation of the body. After all, infinite universal consciousness would like to have the experience of itself. As all individual thoughts in God's infinite mind, we have to play out this facet of life. And you can't check out completely until it's your time to check out completely. Now, it's a wonderful thing. It's the Vedantic approach is the path of away, to get some respite away from the body, to get some even then your physical pain, because you begin to change the way that you perceive and experience pain itself. I've had this experience myself. It is like it's happening in another room. That's what it feels like. When I'm in a deep meditative state, I'm aware the pain is there, but I am not experiencing the pain. There is pain, but I am not experiencing it. And this is an enormous relief. Enormous. However, in my experience, it's not a permanent solution, and you have to come back at some point. The key, and here is the solution: come back, but come back as universal infinite consciousness. Don't come back and put the same mask on. Come back as what you have now discovered. So if you're in that post awakening, post enlightened state, and you're debating, well, do I just leave the body completely? Well, one, you'll find it doesn't work. And two, ensure that when you begin paying attention to the sensations in the body again, don't put on the old uniform. Don't put on the old mask and the old name tag, because it won't be long until you're suffering again. Perceive the sensations as infinite consciousness. Perhaps as a side note here, yeah, perhaps as a side note, sometimes the pain within our body is the physical manifestation of old traumas, a physical manifestation of pain mentally. Emotional, mental pain and trauma can manifest physically, and often manifests physically in very specific areas. There's a reason we say things like you have a chip on your shoulder, or somebody is being a pain in the neck or a pain in the bum. Um, there's often if this physical manifestation within the body is related to something that has happened in the past, or a period of time that has happened in the past, a period of intense strain and difficulty. They say that these things weigh heavily on you. They can store within the physical body. And when you begin a spiritual practice and a meditative practice, a lot of times these things become more apparent. You become more aware that these pockets of dense pain are there. So when you come back to your body as infinite universal consciousness, pay special attention to these areas, particularly if it's an area that you have felt pain in your entire life and have never quite gotten to the bottom of. Particularly if it's an area that it seems like the painkillers just don't touch that area. And even the doctors have kind of given up on it. It's like, well, I don't know. I don't know why you keep getting this pain in your neck. There's no physical biological reason for it. There is a chance, there is a possibility, not always, but there is a possibility that it's actually the residue of a psychological pain. Explore that area as infinite universal consciousness with no ego, no story, no narrative, no attachment, and give the pain the space, the open, empty space that it wants. Pain is trying to get your attention, like a child tugging at your shorts or skirt or whatever, trying to get your attention. That's what pain is a lot of the time. It's going to be there's a very unhappy, scared, hurting child in there who is tugging and poking at your neck or your back or somewhere, your knee or something. Once you're fully established in a pure, empty, open, conscious state, and give this pain the attention that it's asking for, you might find that it begins to dissolve. Over time, it takes a long time. It really does take forever. But it's once you see it for what it is, it's not quite as stressful anymore. It's not quite as sharp and acute. It begins to dissolve. And the bonus there is that you have some incredibly deep insight into your own history, what your body, what the body has experienced throughout the past. But when the ego drops and therefore the story drops, we no longer have the luxury of trying to forget about or disassociate from the pain. It's going to be right there for you. Compassionately and with a great deal of love, return to the body as infinite universal consciousness and listen to the body now. Listen to the body from the perspective of an infinite loving energy. When you listen to the body from the perspective of a temporary, finite, fragile, vulnerable, separate self, you're going to be terrified and you're going to get into a fight with your body a lot. Because how often do you feel an illness coming on and you say, oh, I can't get sick. I can't get sick now. I can't get ill now, not with all of what's going on at work. Or you get injured or something and you go, no, not now. I can't get injured now. I've got all of this stuff to take care of. I've got to take care of the kids. I've got to take care of work. And you deny the reality of what's happening because of the narrative in your head of a desperate, terrified, egoic self, temporary, finite, separate body. And you get into these arguments with your body and therefore end up burying a lot of pain and a lot of problems. There's a reason for this phenomena of teacher's flu, which is where the moment it's the summer holidays, all teachers come down with the flu straight away. It's because they weren't allowing themselves to get sick during term time. It's only once they're on holiday and they've allowed themselves to relax that the illness can manifest. And this is just all part of this bizarre argument that we get in with the body. Constant attempts to resist reality. Resisting reality is the cause of our suffering. Saying, I don't like what is here, that's the cause of a great deal of suffering. It takes a deep level of realization to attempt to transcend this and to, can you accept everything? There was a Zen master on his deathbed. He'd achieved and attained enlightenment and he was dying. And they said to him, how is everything for you now? And he said, everything is fine, but my body is having a hard time keeping up. And that's a beautiful attitude to take towards the body. Sometimes, well, I'm all right, but I think my body hasn't quite got the memo. I think my body is taking its time. Yeah. Don't neglect the body. Really don't neglect the body. I think so. There's some famous cases where people achieve enlightenment, and because of the intensity of the bliss, they stop doing anything at all and neglect their body. And it's like Ramana Maharshi was like this, and it's quite famous. The sort of it shows as a stark example. It's a beautiful example of just how powerful the spiritual realization is, the sadhana, the state of bliss is, because it's so powerful that you're no longer bothered by physical pain. And that's a very attractive prospect to a lot of people. But Ramana Maharshi never said to neglect the body. That was just what happened in his experience. He says, take care of yourself. Take care of your body. Take care of your life. Take care of your family. Take care of your job. Take care of your friends. I think it happens sometimes that in the post-awakening issues, I mean, we there's the concept as well of becoming a stone Buddha, of trying to become something other than human. And it can be, this is going to be a subject for a further, the concept of spiritual bypassing. I'll come to this concept further down the line. But the idea that spirituality can be, if you're not careful, can be life denying, because you found an out, you found an escape. And if you leave a party you're not enjoying, you don't want to go back in. I ain't going back to that party. But at some point, eventually, it's a good idea to go back to the party. But after you've had a rest, that would be my general approach. Come back to the body as infinite universal consciousness once you've had a decent break from being a temporary finite ego. So we have the sort of attempt to embrace pain as a sort of stoic or ascetic discipline. That doesn't quite work. We have the attempt to completely ignore and disappear from the body forever, and that doesn't quite work either. And so my general solution, because the problem is, this is, again, it's trying to put a spiritual coat of paint and just use a spiritual tool to try and do the same old thing, which is escape the experience of now, to escape what is happening now. And the ego wants to get away from this. And so when we learn about spirituality and meditation, we try to use that in order to do the same old thing. But it's the same old problem. Trying to solve a problem that ultimately isn't a problem and using the wrong tools to do it. Same old issue repeating ad infinitum. Experience the body in a different way. Flood your body with the infinite universal consciousness. Recognize that there is there's an appearance of a physical body happening, it's still a mystery. It's still a mystery, really. And with the sense of infinite loving compassion, accept and recognize the pain in the body for what it is now, in this moment, a physical sensation, and that's all. It's a sensation like any other. And if your pain is mild or moderate and short lived, count your blessings, because ultimately that's nothing at all. If it's severe and chronic, my heart goes out to you, and you have a lifetime's work of understanding that pain. Don't fall into the trap of the too stoic, or false stoicism, or asceticism, or the trap of just trying to disappear entirely. As always, the solution is love, loving compassion. And if you come across areas in the body where you find that actually this is a stored energy pattern relating to a past trauma, well, open the area up to the light of awareness and allow that poor, hurt, sad child to cry. Allow that child to have the tantrum that it needs, that it never got. And if you feel just a deep sense of numbness in the body and there's no pain at all, well, don't mistake the absence of pain for health. I think I'll end on that note right there. The absence of pain is no indication of health at all. Thank you for listening. Again, don't forget to follow. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. If you follow me on Spotify, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. It's only $2.99 a month. That is less than the price of a coffee. And you can always drop me questions, queries, insights in the comments, in the Q&As, and in the polls. Other than that, team, thank you so much for listening. Take care, be well, and stay present.